All right, everybody, welcome back to the Realty Rundown from the Nick Wise team at Remax Results. I'm your host, Nick Wise. No Nathan again this week. What a slacker. Yeah, no, he's working his butt off. He's doing a great job putting a bunch of deals together, and so he's got the week off again. You should see him back next Monday morning. So if you're missing Nathan, just hold tight. We'll get him back in here. Today, I'm going to be your solo guide, and we are going to cover a high-profile legal story. It's generating a lot of buzz in the real estate world, and it is that CoStar, also known as LoopNet, is currently suing Zillow. You might not have heard of CoStar Group. You've probably heard of Zillow. So let's dig in and see what we've got. Before we get going here, I think we actually have an image of Mr. Zillow in court. There it is, being sued. That is a live feed from the court of the stealing of photos. So is that really Zillow stealing photos now? Well, according for coverage from Routers, CoStar Group, which is the owner of Homes.com, Apartments.com, and LoopNet, which is primarily a commercial forward site for commercial real estate, they have filed a lawsuit against Zillow in federal court. They claim that Zillow has used upwards of 46,000 images without their consent, many of these images with watermarks. Zillow, what are you doing? Kind of got caught red-handed there is what it looks like, but we'll see. We'll let the courts decide. But CoStar is estimating that the damages could exceed $1 billion. They argue that Zillow has been free riding to boost its rental listing business primarily, and Zillow at this point has not publicly responded. So why does this matter? Why do we care when a couple of multi-billion dollar companies go and sue each other? This has some fallout effects that will affect people in the industry as well as consumers and how they get their information. So legal matters. Basically, for ethical and legal boundaries, agents place a really significant value on property imagery. I use a professional photographer myself, Sandra Bontrager. Huge shout out to Sandra. She's incredible. She really makes homes come to life. I just love it when we send a new listing to clients and they're like, that's our home? Yes, it is. And we don't use any funny fishbowl lenses or anything like that. She's just got an amazing eye to capture the finest details of a home and present it in its best light, but also present it for what it really is. At any rate, obviously we pay for that service, and so imagery is valuable. If unlicensed use continues to run unchecked, it's going to undermine trust and stewardship in our industry. Marketing practices, how will that impact marketing practices? Well, brokers and agents often rely on what we call syndication through MLSs and authorized channels. So a disruption of this framework could limit the access or increase the costs to get access. So syndication is basically when we put something on the MLS, we can say yes or no, I'm going to allow this to be syndicated. If we allow that, that means other companies, other websites, other portals can use the information that we're putting out there and making it public in essence. We have agreements with these companies that they can syndicate our information. I think that's the basis way I can explain that. There's a potential here for an industry precedent to be set. So if there is a ruling that is found in CoStar's favor, it can literally change how large portals operate, leading to stricter licensing or a shift to a more controlled data usage, in that it won't just be so open. They can't just get into that syndicated MLS channel, pull the information out. What we might see, and this is just my take on this, back in the day, this is how it worked actually when Zillow and some of these other websites were starting up. They were basically forming their own channels, I shall say, into the MLSs, into the data that we had. And some would say, and I'm not saying this, some would say stealing that information and then using it for their own purposes to market properties that they had no contract with the seller for. They were basically using that to bring people to their website, and then they would charge agents a fee to be one of their premier agents or whatever they called it at that time, to where if somebody wanted to get information on that house or schedule a showing on that house, boop, up would pop an agent. You would click on that, you would contact them. It's a similar format to what they do today. But again, at that time, they were not syndicated in the same way. So a lot of their information was often incorrect, or a home would be sold. There was a home in Middlebury, north of Middlebury, that continued to be active on Zillow for years after it was sold. It was very frustrating. We would get calls on it. I was one of the agents that worked on that home, and we would continue to get calls on it and be like, no, that home sold years ago. But it continued to show as active on Zillow just because they didn't have that direct pull of information. So that's the downside of it. Consumers have really come to rely on some of these websites for better or for worse. They rely on them to get their information. So if that information is not a free flow as it has been, it could limit the access that consumers have. So again, that's kind of what's at stake here. For agents, it's the ability to protect the consistency and quality of our visual information. Your photos reflect your brand. They authenticate the home that you're putting out there, or the commercial property that you're putting out there. So when those, I guess, when they can be taken, lessen in quality, not good for the agents who are paying for premium service and quality service. Again, for the consumer, you can expect shifts in information. Basically, again, how that information is accessed and how it is put back in the forward-facing product for the consumer. So that could, again, limit the authentication of that information. So you might not be getting the most current information if you're going to certain websites. Go to nickwise.com. It's going to be current. Anyway, and then for the industry overall, if you're in the industry, I think this is just a vital reminder about how you need to respect intellectual property, preserve the ethical standards in marketing. Sometimes when we have a listing, it expires, and it is not okay for a new agent who's going to list that same property to come in and say, well, you got great pictures. I'm just going to download those off the MLS and I'm going to use those. That's a big no-no. That is a wonderful way to get yourself sued. Oh, we do have, actually, I saw there's a picture right there of an agent who did that. Yeah, pretty serious. I mean, that individual, you can tell from that image, not a good person, stealing memories even. So yeah, it happens, unfortunately. And when it happens and when people get caught, they can be sued for rather large amounts. We're talking, each picture can be, I want to say it's like $20,000. It might be more than that. It is a substantial amount of money. So just don't do it. Typically when you reach out to another agent, you're like, hey, I'm going to use my pictures, but you really got a great one of the spring when the flowers are popping and everything. Can I buy that from you? That's the way to do that. Reach out to them, make sure you've got consent from them and from the photographer that took those pictures. You need to make sure they're reaching out and get proof that they did reach out to the photographer and say, hey, it's okay for me to sell this, because you're going to avoid any problems by doing that. So again, this case, this CoStar versus Zillow case, is still very early. It's been filed in a Manhattan federal court with compensation claims that could exceed $1 billion. It's not just about the legal, battle between these two industry giants. It's about setting a standard going forward, how real estate media is managed and shared. So it's important. It's gonna have some ripples depending on how it's settled. So it'll be very fun to watch. We'll try and get you guys updated on that as we get updates. In the meantime, if you've got any questions about real estate, get Wise replies. Nick knows all that fun stuff. Don't be one of these picture stealer guys. They're bad guys. Don't do it. All right, guys, I've got a new bit of music that I've been formulating here. So I'm going to leave you with this, and I'm going to say sayonara, and we'll see you later. Till next time.
Break it down. Nick and Nate, run this town. Really run down, it's going down. Realty rundown, let's break it down. Nick and Nate, run the town. Realty rundown, it's going down. Nick and Nate run the town. Realty rundown, it's going down.